In October 2018, I took my first ever step into the gym, and since then I've spent over 85% of my time in bulking phases, which is over 5.5 years in total. And during that time, I've ran 4 separate bulking phases, but each of these growing phases did not build me the same amount of muscle. Some got me a little bit jacked, others just made me fat, and the last 2 made my physique completely blow up. In this video, I'm going to go back through and analyze these 4 bulking phases and give you the 4 things that I've noticed I was doing in the phases that built me way more muscle than the ones that didn't. But first, I want to go through what went wrong with the disaster bulks. Right, before I get into analysing these, I want to control the variables that might make a difference. So I want to make it clear that since 2018, I've pretty much hit my protein target every single day, and there hasn't been a big change in my protein intake. I've always eaten around 200 grams per day, so that can't affect these results, okay? Secondly, the number of days that I was actually training per week might have an effect. So on my first ever bulking phase, I was training 6 times per week, doing a push-pull legs, push-pull leg split. On my second ever bulk, I was training 5 days per week, doing push-pull legs upper lower. On my third bulk, I was training 4 days per week, and on my fourth bulk, I was training 4 days per week as well. So that's actually decreased over time, okay? So when I first started in the gym, I was a mere 70 kilos, and in my first ever bulking phase, I gained the whole way up to 96 kilos, okay? And then cut down to look exactly the same as I did before I started it. Look at these photos. There's literally barely a difference. In my second bulking phase, I started it a little bit heavier at 83 kilos, but still gained the whole way up to 95 and ended up just getting fat throughout it. And I ended that phase literally feeling sluggish, grim, and overweight. In my third bulk, which was after a competition period, I started it at 70 kilos again because I was absolutely shredded, and I gained the whole way up to 87. But in this gaining phase here, I blew the fuck up. I was getting the best pumps of my life. I was literally getting bigger week on week, but I wasn't gaining any body fat. It was like every tiny bit of muscle, every single bit of weight that I was gaining was pure muscle. And I was growing faster in this gaining phase here than I did in either of these 2 bulking phases here. And then in my final gaining phase, which is the one that I'm literally have just finished this last week, I started at 78 kilos and I finished it last week at 86 kilos. And in this last gaining phase, my whole physique started blowing up. So not only my upper body, but also my weaker muscle groups like my legs even grew like 7 centimeters in 10 months, and everything started taking off at this point. Even though technically it should be the other way around, because I was still in my newbie phase in these 2 here, and I should have been able to build more muscle during these 2 phases than these 2. But because I changed something, these 2 grew me more than these 2, which is weird and wrong. And now that I've been through these phases and I've actually analysed back as to what grew me the most muscle, I have got a repeatable system for running the perfect gaining phase, and it's what I give to my clients and it's what I get them to do. And so far it's built them over 300 kilos of muscle. Like my client Rob, who gained 8 kilos and actually looked leaner at the end of it. Or Jordan, who ran 1 gaining phase and cut down to look absolutely shredded. So if you want me to build out your next compound gaining phase and map it out week by week, telling you how quickly to gain weight, what to do with your diet, how to train so that you can get results like this, then click the top link in the description below. Because I've got 10 spaces left to work with me one-to-one, but 2 of them have already gone. So if you're interested in having my help running through a gaining phase like this and getting jacked, then click that link and save one of those last 8 spaces while you still can. So looking back at these gaining phases, I can see in my first bulk, I gained 26 kilos. In my second, I gained 12. In my third, I gained 17 kilos, and in my final one, I gained 8. And I also went back and got the dates as to when I started these gaining phases and when I ended them to see how long I was actually spending in these phases, because everyone always says that, you know, the amount of time you spend in a surplus is how much, you know, you're going to grow, and you have to spend a load of time in a surplus to grow. I wanted to cross-check that with the data that I've actually collected on my gaining phases. So in this first bulk, I gained 26 kilos and I did it in 12 months. This was a whole year bulk, which was great. This second gaining phase, where I gained 12 kilos, was only a 6-month bulk. And then my last 2 gaining phases were a lot longer. So this one here, after my competition season, was 16 months, so over a year. And this final one that I've just finished now was 11 months. And as I'd seen, these first 2 gaining phases got me way worse results than these last 2. So looking at this, I can see that I was working harder, training more, eating more food, forcing more calories down, and actively like working harder every single week. but they were building me less muscle than these two phases here. And I could kind of tell this while I was in these phases as well, because in these gaining phases where I was gaining weight quite quickly, I just felt sluggish. I felt like I was getting fat. I couldn't see myself actually getting bigger through muscle. And I felt like my appetite was dying every single week. I was having to shovel food back, chasing like my scale weight, trying to get that up. And it felt like it wasn't actually productive building muscle. I was just gaining weight. Whereas in these two phases, the pumps that I was getting in the gym were fucking disgusting. Like the best pumps I've ever had in my life. My appetite was staying intact for longer, so things were still tasting good, like 6-7 months into a bulking phase, which was unheard of for me. I could actually get my calories down easier. I wasn't having to shovel food down and have digestive issues and stuff like that. My training was more consistent and the pumps were insane, as I said. So I could feel it that these were more productive when it came to actually building muscle, and I wasn't just throwing on weight for the sake of it. So I realized that in these shorter gaining phases here, I was so desperate to build muscle that I was trying to force feed it. I was trying to shovel food down, gain weight faster to build muscle quicker, but it was actually like tripping me up. The quicker I was trying to grow, the less muscle I was building, which is really weird. Because I'd force feed, I'd lose my appetite and have to cut the gaining phases short and only reach like the 6-month mark or the 12-month mark, which then led to me going into a cutting phase, resetting like my momentum in that gaining phase and starting it all over again. And that's why I never really got off the ground and built muscle in these first two phases. And when I ran this gaining phase here that took 17 months, I really started to understand that muscle feeds on momentum, not speed. Like 2 6-month bulking phases separately will not build you the same amount of muscle as one 12-month one. It's not about how big the surplus is that you're in, it's about how long you're in that surplus for. It's like there's just a penny jar that you're depositing muscle into, right? And every week you're in a surplus, you get to deposit that little bit of muscle. But if you're constantly like doing 6 months of putting in and then going into a cut and taking some out and then putting some in again, it's nowhere near as effective as just like depositing week after week after week after week for 16 months. And there's like this weird compounding effect where it gets better over time when your training is more consistent, when your diet is consistent, your body weight is going up really nice and slowly, the pumps are insane. Like there's something magic that happens in longer gaining phases. And I've seen it happen with me, and I've also seen it happen with my clients. And the crazy thing about this is you can literally get jacked from one compound gaining phase like this. Like, fuck these two. Imagine if you just skipped these two and jumped straight to the gaining phase that actually built you a load of muscle. The one that actually transformed your physique. Imagine if that was the first one that you did. And this is exactly what my client Jacob did, which kind of annoyed me, right? So he started working with me and he wanted to put on a load of muscle, and he was debating whether to go into like bulking cutting cycles, doing like 5 months bulking, 2 months cutting, 5 months bulking, 2 months cutting, or just trust me and send it with one compound gaining phase. I convinced him on it and he did it, and he went from 70 kilos and stick thin, similar to where I was when I started, to literally looking like Jack Tarzan. And he didn't do a single cut during this phase. That was just one gaining phase. Like, so this is what I'm telling you. If you learn how to run one compound gaining phase like this from the start, you only need to do that once and you are jacked forever. He came out the other side looking like a whole new fucking dude. And as I said earlier, if you want me to map out your next gaining phase so that you can do this as well and get jacked in the next 12 months, then click the top link in the description and grab one of my last ever coaching spaces, because after July, they're gone. I'm not doing fitness coaching again after July, but if you get in before then, your price is fixed forever. That's never going to change, and you've got that space for as long as you want it. But after July, they're gone. So go and get involved. And then the final thing that I analyzed is my monthly rate of gain, okay? So what this part symbolizes is how much weight I was actually gaining on a monthly basis during these gaining phases. So in other words, how quickly was I gaining weight? So in my first bulk, I was gaining 2.16 kg per month. In my second bulk, I was gaining 2 kilos per month. In my third bulk, which was the really long one, I gained 1.06 kg per month, so a lot slower than the two before it. And then this final bulk that I've just done, I was only gaining 0.73 kilos per month. And this is how I came up with the rules of compound gaining. I started to realize that keeping this number lower and gaining weight slower for a longer period of time was building me more muscle. Even if I was gaining less weight in total and not reaching as high a body weight as I did in the bulking phase before that, it was still building me more muscle. And now that I know this, And I've got the blueprint to follow, which kind of forces you to do this and run these gaining phases, not these two. Clients can come in and work with me and grow more muscle in their first gaining phase than I did in my first 2 years of lifting. Like Owen, who had never trained before when he started working with me, and then 12 months later, he's put on 10 kilos of muscle. He has biceps that are going to fill out all of his sleeves for the rest of his life, and he's pretty much jacked forever. After one gaining phase, he's never done a cut, and he looks like this already. You're literally one compound gaining phase away. One bulking phase like this, done properly, you are one compound gaining phase away from being jacked forever. So if you want access to the blueprint, you know what you need to do. Go and click that link. So the 4 things that I realized that were making me grow more muscle in these gaining phases, even while training less in the gym every week, I realized that making my gaining phases last over a year while I was gaining less total weight, so adding less weight to my body, but doing it for a longer period, and not hitting as high a body weight as I had the previous year. So I got lighter every single year doing these gaining phases. And finally, gaining less weight on an actual monthly basis led to me building more muscle. So if you're about to head into your next gaining phase, take this into mind and just realize that you can't force feed muscle growth. Muscle grows on momentum, not speed. So you need to go about this patiently and do it fucking properly, because all you have to do is do it once properly and you're jacked forever. But 2 or 3, 4-month bulking phases are never going to build you as much muscle as 1 year-long compound gaining phase. It just won't. So if you're going to do this, fucking lock in, do it properly for 1 year, and you never have to do it again.